Hello folks, you're very welcome back to a Mugs Game podcast, the new sports betting podcast with your hosts Smeg and Ronnie.
Today we will review a couple of brilliant sporting events that have taken place in the last week. We will then preview some important competitions that are coming up, namely the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship and of course the FIFA World Cup in Russia.
We'll also be exploring the potential merits of in-running betting with a view to offering you some useful strategies that have proven to be quite profitable for us in the past. So Ronnie, how about your favourite sporting event of the last week? Which was the one that you enjoyed the most, considering there were so many?
From the last week, I would say wasn't at the game, but from a supporter's point of view, I would say it was the Real Madrid and Bayern Munich Champions League semi-final second leg. Yeah, last Wednesday night. It had everything really, apart from maybe a red card. That was the only thing missing from the game. Madrid went into the game 2-1 up from the first leg, where Munich had been very poor. And even though Madrid had thrown away a lead against Juventus in the previous round, I don't think anyone really expected, based on the first leg, that we would have a scenario where Munich were a kick of a ball away from knocking the holders out. You know, Everton had two early goals in the first 10 minutes. It had a mistake from Ulrich, the Munich keeper, to start second half, and you know, Madrid are surely there now. 10 minutes later, a player that's on loan from Madrid, James Rodriguez, sticks one in the net. So you have a half hour left, and Madrid were really on the racks. You know, man of the match was probably Kyler Navas on goal. You know, who's been much maligned in recent weeks, and it was just such drama, such a special night, and it kind of summed up the Champions League at this stage of the competition in recent years, where so many goals and so many top players, and you know, so many goal attempts. I think Munich had 20 odd attempts. You know, on a team like Madrid in their own stadium, which is amazing, you know. So that was that night, that 90 minutes, that was special. Yeah, I love that.
Well, considering that they had like 20 goal attempts in Madrid's own stadium,
yeah,
and you know, obviously they've gifted Madrid a goal, like they gifted one in the first leg as well, and for the most part they have been surely the better team over the two legs. You know, from a possession point of view, from a chances point of view. From almost every aspect, except the fact that they just didn't get the ball in the net as much, you know. But would you not say that there was a lot of talk as well about, you know, this Madrid team, they've been so lucky this year. I mean, so lucky against Bayern, they've been so lucky against Juventus. You know, like a penalty in the last minute. You know, you know, would you agree with that assessment of this Madrid team? Or
well, listen, like at the highest level, the importance of luck can never be underestimated. You know, people are always looking for answers, you know, why this team won or why that team. But when it comes to cup competitions, especially one-off games, the years of history has shown us how important luck is, especially in a game like soccer, where one goal could actually decide the outcome of it. You know what I mean? The role of luck and success is far greater than people realise. And if we go back 20 years soccer-wise, for example, back to '98 World Cup, when Brazil were hammered and fined by France, Ronaldo was at the peak of his powers, and the morning of the game he has a seizure, and he's only there in body playing the game, and France go on and win the game 4-0. You look at in 2006. You know, would Italy be world champions if Zidane wasn't sent off for the headbutt, a mad incident like that? You know, who said Zidane wouldn't have stayed on the pitch and scored a penalty that Trezeguet missed, for example? You know, we can go, like, you know, there's so many examples of winning teams having a massive chunk of luck at some stage. They either get there or actually on the day. But
even United in '99, when you consider, you know, even against Inter Milan, you know, when Inter Milan had Baggio at that time, you know, Henning Berg in the first leg, you know, last minute shot, cleared it off the line. Then they get to, you know, they're dominated. Bayern hit the crossbar, hit the post, dominate the match, and then they get 2 goals in injury time.
Yeah.
You know, fair play to them. They never give up. They won it. But it's particularly a sport like soccer. You know, there are so many variables at play. Like, of course, the luck would be a massive factor. You know, obviously, great champions need luck, and they capitalise on the luck that they get. But I would have to agree with you.
Yeah, you even take it back to our own, here in Ireland, Gaelic football. Remember the final a few years ago, Kerry Donegal 2014. And Paul Durkin, missed kicks a kick out. Donny puts in the net. Kerry win by a goal. Like, one moment like that, you know, what do you call it? You say Kerry are lucky because they won that. Of course, you could say they are, but I'm saying that this has happened for years. It always will happen. You look at Portugal, the Euro 16 champions a couple of years ago. They beat Wales in the semi-final. Wales were without Aaron Ramsey and Ben Davis were suspended, two of their best players in the tournament. So that's the unluckiness Wales had. And so it comes down to big tournaments, and it can often come down to the role of a ball, your best player suspended, your best player injured, these fine margins, and they will always be there. And you can argue Madrid over the last few years, their big players have been there, haven't been injured in big games like Marcelo, Ramos, Ronaldo, Cruz. They have been there, and they've made hay with that. But I thought the other night, Wednesday night after, especially with the pundits on television and so on, I thought they spoke about Madrid's element look in a bit derogatory, really. They've beaten PSG and Juventus to get here. They've won. They're going for 4 out of 5 Champions League. So it's not look why Madrid are in the Champions League final. Do you mean again? It's not. That's not the single reason. But of course, they had luck last Wednesday, and all the teams who win things do get luck. That's my point.
More often than not. There's very rarely that. A team in a World Cup competition, I'd say, well, I wouldn't say, is it more often than not that at some stage they have to win a penalty shootout to win the cup? Yeah, or as you said, or even in Champions League. Well, maybe less so in Champions League because of the way it goes makes it less likely that there would be a penalty shootout. But in these cup competitions in a sport with as many variables as soccer, luck is going to play a massive part.
Absolutely, yeah. We think back even 2012 when remember Chelsea beat Munich. Munich on paper had a far better team, and on the night they absolutely destroyed Chelsea. But Chelsea got a goal at the end, Drogba scored, and they went on to win penalties. This has happened. It's happened for years, and will continue to happen. So when people mention about Madrid, how did it go through last night? We have to be not afraid to accept the best explanation sometimes is there is none, and that happened on the night and that's it. But Madrid went to beat PSG at home 3-1. They went to Juventus in that first leg and won 3-0 out there. They've still showed massive amounts of class and the level they're at throughout the tournament. They've had a hard run to the final. So I just kind of nearly laugh at some of the talk about the luck element to them last whenever it was on last Wednesday night.
And come here, can I ask you, did you have a bet on the match at all, or did you find anything worse?
Beforehand I didn't, and it's very hard get an angle with the bookies on big games like that where every player is known so well and every market is covered so well. It's very hard to get an angle before a game like that. I was hoping maybe to get one in running. Actually, I was going to watch the game and have a bit of time to pick up something running, maybe a situation, an opportunity can often come in running where a situation arises that wasn't there before the game, and the bookies have less time to sort themselves out for that. So that's where I'd like to do, especially in the bigger games. I'll give an example of opportunities coming to you. For example, it was the last day of the championship on Sunday in England, and there was a lot of stake at the top and the bottom. And at bottom end, for example, Bolton were home to Nottingham Forest. The way the situation was, basically, Bolton had to win the game to stay up, and after an hour it was 0-0 at home to Notts Forest, who nothing to play for. It was 0-0. For most games, Meg, corners in a soccer match are usually about 9 or 10 as an average. This was it. After an hour of this game, there had only been 2, but Bolton had to win the game. They had to do something next half hour, which is going to have to throw the shackles off and basically get the ball into the box as quick as possible. Exactly. So in running, that market line was down from 10 down to 5. So it was a half hour play, and over 5 corners was odds against. Odds against in the situation had come up now as it turned out, that bet won. There was 8 or 9 corners, but the point of it is, that was never a bet 60 minutes before that. The situation of that Bolton were in would meant they're going to have to put balls into the box, and what happens when you do that, ricochets come, shots at goal, and corners tend to happen more often than they would in a normal situation.
So basically the bookies would be using the same mathematical model that they would do based on how many corners there has been so far, but they're not taking into account the situation at play, which is especially when you're dealing with good professional players, top players here, they're going to be capable of getting the ball down to one end of the field pretty quick. They're both teams are even as well, which wouldn't be a gulf, which means it could happen either way. That's why I look forward to the World Cup as well, especially the second group game or the third group game, where certain teams will just have to win. So when you have to win, your mentality changes. If it might be the second half, it might be 70 minutes gone, and what happens, teams get desperate, they might foul, there might be an opportunity for card index betting, huge opportunity for corners. But in running is the way that you play them, because before the game there's too many variables a lot of time, whereas within the game your chances are greater. That's basically my point. Yeah, for sure, that makes sense to me. So what about, you just mentioned the World Cup, and obviously you offered a few bets from last week's podcast obviously one of them was for Egypt to get out of the group at 11-8, and also for Senegal to get out of the group at 11-8, and the final one was
the two we staked,
Loftus-Cheek to make the England squad. But have you found in the last week any other market?
Yeah, a few more markets have propped up, and they will do in the next 6 weeks before the tournament. One bet I have staked a few days ago, it actually goes back to a team in Group A, which is the group with Russia, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Uruguay. I've backed Uruguay. I think Uruguay are going to have a good tournament. I think they are a very good side. They came second in the South American qualifying behind Brazil, comfortably. They have some excellent players, but they have obviously Suarez and Cavani. They play 4-4-2. They play the two of them up front. Why would you not play the two when you have them? Of course, there isn't a country in the World Cup that has two strikers as good as those two. That's for starters. There's no way.
Yeah.
They have two.
Well, Brazil have maybe Neymar and Firmino.
Maybe so. Cavani scored 40 goals this season. Suarez has scored 30. This is the form they're coming into it. For their country, they both played about 100 games. They've scored, I think Suarez has 50 goals, Cavani has 40 odd. They're two proven goal scorers at the highest level. So they're the two strikers. At the back, they're two centre halves, or the two Atletico Madrid centre halves. Godin and Gimenez. The two of them play together, like, that's massive. You saw Atletico against Arsenal Thursday night. How defend
so tough to break down.
So tough to break down. They're the exact same. To bring that to Uruguay, the fact that they play together every week obviously helps. So that's two centre halves and two strikers for starters. You know, in midfield they've a lot of good young players, like Valverde, who's who Madrid signed, who's on loan at Deportivo this year. He was one of the stars under 17 World Cup last year. They rave about him. He could have an influence as a midfielder. They've another couple of midfielders who play in good teams in Italy. Bentancur, who plays for Juventus, and Vecino, who's played most games for Inter Milan this season. These are younger players in the side as well who should make Uruguay stronger than they might have been a few years ago. They've been a good team for a while, but the age profile of them suggests that this will be their last, like Godin and Gimenez, Suarez, Cavani. This might be their last hurrah 4 years on. These guys are kind of 30, 31, 32. That's the age profile they are. You know, they're not going to be there in 4 years. If they are, they won't be at the level they're at now. So I like Uruguay. There's two bets I was considering, either Uruguay to top that group, but I've gone for a bit more value maybe. To top that group, they're around even money generally. But what I like is for Uruguay to reach the quarter final. So get out of the group, win a last 16 game, reach the quarter final. With Boyles, that's 13-8. So I'm going to stake 2.5 points on Uruguay to reach the last 8. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they reach a semi-final, but to reach a quarter-final, that's what I'm looking at. That's with Boyles.
Regarding, looking at the group, it would seem like they're the strongest outfit of the group. Obviously, you've tipped up Egypt to go through as well. Saudi Arabia, you'd imagine, would struggle in that group, and obviously Russia, have. We talked about them last week. They've given us very little reason to believe that they're going to produce this World Cup. Yeah,
it's a really soft group from Uruguay's point of view. You couldn't handpick a better one from their point of view. We mentioned about Russia and Saudi Arabia being weak. Uruguay, they should top it, but what I like the 13-8 on them to win a last 16 game, because even if they draw that last 16 game, they can win an extra time or penalty. It's just to qualify. Do you know what I mean? I think the 13. If Uruguay, for example, Uruguay come out of that group, they will play the Group B runners up or winners, depending if they're first or second. The most likely situation right now is that they're going to be playing Portugal in the last 16 game.
Yeah.
We presume Spain would top that group that Portugal are in. So most likely we can look at many different variables, but it looks like Uruguay, Portugal last 16 game. And if you were to tell me that Uruguay are 13-8 to go through against Portugal, I'd be biting your hand off.
Well, Portugal are European champions.
Yeah.
They still have Ronaldo. They still have some. Most of the same team. That have won.
What I will say,
ago.
Portugal, they were, in fairness, Euro 16, they were underwhelming champions at the same time. I mentioned already to beat Wales in the semi-final. Wales team without Ramsey and Davis. That was the bit of luck we spoke about. The way that turned out. But they won the Euro 16. But if I've looked back over the trends over the last 20 years or so. It's proven that a team that wins a tournament, especially Euros, they generally don't do well 2 years later. The reasons for that are probably obvious. A team peaks at that particular time.
Yeah.
And maybe
except for Spain, obviously they had that great Spain.
They did, yeah.
Maybe they're the
a
outlier.
special era, yeah. But this this Portugal team, I'm not so sure how good they are. Even if you look at their defence, Pepe, Fonte, Bruno Alves, these are centre halves, they're 35, 36. Suarez, Cavani, and these guys, I'd fancy them. I think.
And is Ronaldo, is he the same player even himself?
Yeah, well, you can argue with his goals this year. He certainly has been flying, like, you know, there's no doubt about that. But again, yeah, he's 33, and they're so reliant on him, you know, so reliant on him. Whereas I think Uruguay do have even with the two strikers up there, two different guys who can do the damage. But Portugal, if you look, I mentioned Portugal 2016 European champions, and I'm not convinced that they're going to do well in this World Cup. If we go right back, the Dutch team won Euro 88. Didn't do well at World Cup, Italia 90. The Denmark team won Euro 92, didn't qualify for next World Cup. The Germans won Euro 96. They were really poor in the World Cup 98. France won Euro 2000, didn't get out of the group in 2002. It goes on. Greece won 04, didn't qualify for next World Cup. Yeah, Spain were they obviously in 28, 27. But even then, when Spain, towards the end of the year, 2012, they won Euros. They didn't get out of the World Cup in 2014. You know, even the great Spaniards. That's my point is, you know, maybe the team that like Portugal who have won something are worth taking on here.
Yeah, I understand.
And it looks to me like that they're probably Uruguay's most likely opponents in that last 16 game. And I'm happy to stake 2.5 points on the Uruguayans to reach the last 8. That's at 13-8, and best price at the moment is with Boyle Sports.
Okay, brilliant stuff. So 2.5 points on Uruguay to reach the last 8 of the World Cup, at 13-8 with Boyle Sports. Obviously, last week the hurling championship kicked off, the Joe McDonagh Cup kicked off, and there was some good wins for Antrim, Carlow, and Westmeath, who in particular have seemed to be making great progress in the last couple of years. But the Leinster Championship is what's starting this week, and I want you to run through the betting market on that for me. Now, obviously, I was looking at it myself there, and it was, one price that stood out to me was the fact that Dublin were 1-3 to be in the bottom 2. And do you feel like that's a fair price, or how would you assess that?
So it's a disaster. Obviously, we spoke last night. 2 teams from the 5, Galway, Kilkenny, Wexford, Dublin, Offaly. 2 of those are going to be out in mid-June. They all play 4 matches, 2 home, 2 away, and the bookies would have it looked at. Offaly around 1-20 to be in the bottom 2, Dublin 1-3 to be in the bottom 2. That's where they're at, and that's with Boyles and Paddy Power. They feel the exact same. That it's pretty straightforward that Galway, Kilkenny and Wexford will share the top 3 spots and get out. It's really hard to argue against those markets, against those lines. It really is. If you look at, you know, the league form itself, earlier in the year, you know, Dublin had a really, really poor league. You know, Wexford and Kenny reached the semi-finals of it. Galway are obviously league champions last year, All-Ireland champions this year. Then we're never going to be quite at the races in this year's league, the way it started so early as well. So it is hard to argue with those markets. This weekend, I'm really looking forward to the start of it this weekend. Offaly play Galway Saturday night in Tullamore, and the game I'll be at Sunday is in Parnell Park, where Dublin play Kilkenny. You mentioned Joe McDonagh Cup did start the weekend, and there were excellent wins, especially for, as you said, Westmeath. That will go on again this weekend, and maybe later in the week we'll have a bet for one of those Joe McDonagh Cup games. But if we look at this game Sunday, first of all, Dublin and Kilkenny. Dublin 11-2, Kilkenny 1-7. You're talking handicap of 6 or 7 points for different teams, and it is hard to see Dublin actually win the game, but I do. The problem for Dublin, Smeg, is that they just don't have their best 15 players on the pitch. They're not going to have them on the pitch. You know, unfortunately, for different reasons. You know,
with what reasons? What would the main reason for that?
Well, you've got the best club side in Ireland for last 2 years is Coola, okay, and they've had their hardest matches have been in Dublin, which shows the quality that's there. But a couple of those players like Dara Conlon and Colin Cronin, and especially Mark Schutte, these guys aren't available to Dublin for their own. Sean Tracy as well, their own whatever the reasons that Mark Schutte is that he's in the Dublin football squad with Jim Gavin. He was on it last year. He's probably given another go this year, but
it's better chance to win an All-Ireland medal, and of course, but
that's it. But these players are not there. Added to that, they've got some injuries in their forward. They've got a couple of really talented forwards, Donald Burke and Eamon Dillon, who were injured. I'm not sure if Dillon's going to be back. Donald Burke's out of the game. These are players Dublin can't really afford to be without. That's the key. But I expect the first half this Sunday, Smeg, to be one hell of a half. Parnell Park is very tight. Dublin will have a lot of big physical players, and I think they will I think they will throw absolutely everything at Kilkenny this first half. And Kilkenny, the league wasn't the same as it normally is because it was on early. So even with Kilkenny are National League champions and won the final against Tip.
And Dublin had a lot of fringe players playing in the early part of the league as well.
They did, yeah. And they showed it. I suppose they showed it for about 20 minutes against Tipperary and Croke Park in the quarter final. They played brilliant stuff for 20 minutes. It is in them. It is indeed. A lot of these guys, they won the Leinster in 2 years ago. 2016, they won Leinster Minor 2 years ago. They had Minor and 21 Leinster medals from around 2010, 2011, 2012. Some of these guys. So they're not without a chance. They're not without a chance, and what I would say all the markets aren't up yet at the moment, so we can't talk in detail about it till later in the week on the actual game. But I expect the first half to be a real war of attrition in Parnell this Sunday. I was looking at the market, actually, the half-time, full-time markets, for example, and for Dublin to be winning half-time, but Kilkenny to win after full-time is 6-1, and also maybe a draw at half-time and Kilkenny to win as value is 18-1. I just think at half-time, at least, this is going to be very, very close. I think it could be point for point in that first half. With Dublin, they have strong men. They have, Crummy, Barrett, Keeney's, Tracy, Liam Rush. These guys are big men who really will, Owen O'Donnell, who will really pull up to Kilkenny at least in the first half next Sunday, if not further into the game. At the moment I'm not staking a bet on it, but I do expect a serious game in Parnell on Sunday. Looking ahead after that as regards the other teams, Offaly of course, especially the fact that they have to play 4 weeks in a row as well, a bit like what we spoke about Waterford last week. They played the first 4 weeks.
They have improved under Kevin Martin, it seems to me.
They have, and they seem to speak about him very highly. The way they speak about him, Offaly do have their players playing. That's one thing they do have. I think there is very little, whereas in comparison, say, certainly to Dublin. So Offaly will be more competitive than maybe the handicap 12-13 points against Galway is a bit higher this Saturday night. I'm not sure yet, but if we're looking at them, Marcus, it is hard to see past the way they have the 3 priced up, with Galway, Kenny, Wexford being the three to come out of it. Wexford obviously had a great year last year. They probably had a worrying league semi-final in a couple of weeks ago against Kenny, where they were very poor, very flat looking.
Beaten,
went out of that game. I think my bet at the moment, Smeg, is for Galway to top that group. I was contemplating between Galway either winning Leinster or topping the group, and I've gone for topping the group for a couple of reasons. I think they're still going to be just as hungry as they were last year. I think their age profile is brilliant. They've so many top players in that mid-20 brackets, 24, 25, 26. These ads,
they'll have matured.
The Coonies, Dahi Burke, these guys, they're a great age. Then you have kind of 28, 29-year-olds, like Joe Canning, David Burke. And then you've added in your younger guys, 20, 21, 22, the likes of Conor Wheel and Cottle Mannion. A really good balanced and a really good mix. Subs who come on there in the final make a big difference, like Niall Burke, Jason Flynn. I just think they are going to be just as good as they were last year, it looks like to me. Think of the year before last, the Tipperary won that Ireland final easy. They beat Galway by a point in that game.
Exactly,
so there's real consistency really there with Galway.
But what about Kilkenny then, and league champions, and certainly Cody seems to have instilled a real hunger, which he is renowned for, of course, anyway. But there certainly does seem to be a renewed hunger this year with that team, and even the way that they beat Wexford and beat Tipperary, and bullied them off the field, really.
Well, the spine of the Kilkenny team during the league didn't change. It was really good with Pádraig Welsh, Buckley, and TJ Reid centre forward, and Wally Welsh full forward, really good. And with the guys to come back in, Richie Hogan, Colin Fennelly, Paul Murphy, Conor Fogarty came on that league final. Kilkenny will be strong and be very, very competitive. They're going to be right there in the middle. They'll certainly get out of this group. There's no doubt about that. I will take back to that league final. Tipperary were missing 5 of their forwards that would have started games last year. Calnan, Dan McCormack, Niall O'Mara, Noel McGrath, Bonamara. These guys weren't playing that league final. These guys weren't playing that. When you're talking with the bar of being Tip and Galway, I'm not so sure about that. I'd be wary about putting them up with those two teams yet. But they will get out of this. They will get out of this group. The reason why I fancy Galway to top the group ahead of Kilkenny or Wexford or any of them really is, for Galway, they've got. They're in Pearse Park. Galway haven't played a home championship game in 20 odd years. They're going to be at home to Kilkenny in their second game. And that home advantage alone over Kilkenny sways it for me that Galway will actually top the group. They do go down to Wexford Park a couple of weeks after that, where they lost in the league quarter final by a goal. There was actually a funny fixture going around the time, one of Galway's backroom members measuring the pitch, getting all the measurements, all looking ahead to this championship game maybe in June, you know. But no, the fact that Galway have Kilkenny at home sways it for me that Galway will actually top this group with the players they have. So I'm going to stake 2.5 points on Galway to top that group after the 4 games, and that's at 11 to 10, so it's odds against. I think it's fair, and that's again with Boyle Sports.
Okay, so that's 2.5 points with for Galway to top the group in the Leinster Championship at 11 to 10 with Boyle Sports, and that's your 2 tips for today.
They are, and we might look more in depth at the match markets later in the week when they come out.
Okay, so
if we have a bet to do, we might stick it up on Twitter as well.
Exactly.
So Smeg, I mentioned the Madrid-Munich game in detail. What sporting event in the last 7 days captured your imagination the most?
Well, for me, it had to be the Betfred World Snooker Championships. I actually went over.
You were going over the semi-final.
Mentioned in the last podcast, I went over. I saw this. I saw the third session, the morning session of Williams and Barry Hawkins. Yeah. A very high quality session. Like there were 3 century breaks, 2 from Hawkins, 1 from Williams. And look, I just think, 2 great semi-finals. There was obviously a great quarter-final between Trump and Higgins as well, where Higgins won on a final frame decider, just so ballsy. Yeah. And then the final was an absolute classic between two legends of the game. And really, with Williams winning, like John Higgins is a legend and always will be a legend of the game. Yeah. But Williams really confirmed his status as a legend as well to win a 3rd world title. Yeah,
I thought it was incredible last night just to see like the age of the 2 guys. This could have been 2002, 2003, 2004 that we were looking at this last night. It's 2018, 20 years on from when Higgins won it first. 50 years on from when Williams was even in it last.
Yeah.
Why are say we call them the old men? Why were they in the World Championship final this year? Is that a bad indictment on some of the younger players? Maybe.
Well, it probably is a mixture of a lot of things. I'd say maybe the fact is that if you think back in the 80s and 90s and all the great players that were in their 20s, you're thinking of Jimmy White. And you're even Steve Davis and these fellas, and you're just thinking they probably just Alex Higgins even in the 80s. These guys, they didn't look after themselves well, and they kind of played lived a bit too fast, and they burned out a bit too early, and maybe just the older guys now just look after themselves a bit better. No, that could be one reason, but also, it does seem like that there hasn't been young lads that have come through and kicked on, because the likes of Higgins won in 20 years ago when he was in his early 20s, and Williams has won in his early 20s, and now we did have Kyron Wilson, 26-year-old in the semi-final, but there isn't really any sign of a young gun just bursting onto the scene like Ronnie did, or like John Higgins did, and taking the game by the scruff of the neck, and like Hendry did, of course, so I don't know why that is. I think even if you just think about Ireland now, obviously we used to have Ken, when we were in the 90s to support. He had some great finals, beating Hendry, of course, 97, and then the finals against Higgins and Williams, of course. I knew a fella who, in the 2003 final, when Ken was playing Williams, and actually had an Irishman who had backed Williams and was the only man in Ireland supporting Mark Williams in that final.
Who would he have been, Smeg?
I wonder who that would have been, Ronnie. For 40 quid.
45 actually.
45 quid. Gee, that's how much your patriotism means to you. But anyway, that's the way it is. But obviously Williams has been he's been in the doldrums, in the snooker wilderness for many years. But he just found his game, and look, it was absolutely brilliant. But I will say one thing about the snooker, and that just I've never really been a snooker bettor. I mentioned last week that I backed Mark Allen, and I mentioned that I fancied Ali Carter to beat Williams, but probably just because he played so well against Ronnie and so on. and Williams was sort of strolling through, and didn't seem, he was playing well, obviously, and obviously had a great year. But I sensed from watching him in the first 2 rounds that his intensity wasn't there. But sometimes he makes it look like that, and he can fool you that way,
like that, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I just feel like snooker betting to me. I'd love to find out if any of you guys out there are snooker punters, and if you can find an angle to win on it. But to me, it seems like a proper mugs game, a proper mugs game. And I just for these particular reasons, I'd make this, that you're not necessarily in control of your destiny in snooker. You could do very little wrong and just have to sit in your chair for 4 or 5 frames on the spin. Like at certain times that Higgins had to do for Williams, and Williams had to do for Higgins, and like if say for playing Ronnie or whatever, and also the margin for error is so tight. There's so many variables, like the run of the balls can really affect how certain frames can go, especially when it gets tight. And like when I go back, I just think that snooker punting is to me strikes me as a very difficult, a bit of a mugs game, difficult market to win money off, unless of course you're John Higgins and whenever he loses, And did you very shrewd punter when he's losing friends, isn't he?
Did you have a bet Saturday at Hawkins and Williams? Did you have a bet while you were there? No.
No, we didn't have. No, I didn't have a bet myself, but I was there with actually a group of friends that we were there. Basically, we actually went there on a trip because we had made money from being in a gambling group together. Just in a little punting group, not for only a bit of fun, but we made a bit of money anyway. We went over to Sheffield anyway to enjoy the snooker and make a weekend out of it. And we went to Sheffield Wednesday match and just decided to put the pot on them for no reason, only for the pure crack of it, and we won it anyway. And then we got a text from a friend of ours, showing us a picture of Mark Williams eating a kebab at 2:15 in the morning before the World Final, and hear me going on about the snooker players look after themselves well, but as soon as we did that, and sure us, we had a few too many at that stage, and we said, right lads, pot on Higgins to win the first session, and so no, it didn't work out well. But sure, that was only for a bit of crack for us.
Even last night, Hazel Irvine and Parrott and Davis, they were, they said they were saying possibly the best final of all time.
Well, one thing, Hazel Irvine loves the snooker. If there's ever a woman that loves the snooker, and it's Hazel Irvine. And I'll tell you one thing about it. I'd say she was desperate for Higgins to win, because she knows remember Higgins, the last time he won, he beat Trump in the final, and she knows she wants tears. Hazel wants tears, and Higgins he's an emotional man. He's the man to give them to her. And I remember when she beat when he beat Trump, she was sort of she was needling him a little bit, not needling him, but she was searching, probing for those tears, and then she ended up going, and there's your father up in heaven now, and he's holding the brandy glass up for you. And of course Higgins bawled, so she was trying to do the same, but look, it's a bit of crack. But I will say one thing, from the last thing I'll say about for the snooker from the betting point of view is that it is, it struck me from my own experience of a tennis bettor, is that it's so important to know your player. I remember, when we were watching it on TV last night, and to know their psychology, know how strong they are under pressure, and how they can react to adversity. For example, it looked like when Higgins reeled off those 5 frames in a row and it went 50-all. Everyone thinks the momentum is with Higgins here. Surely he's the bet. And I know lads were saying, we should back Higgins now. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, you should always look at history. Always look at the history of players, particularly in individual sports. We saw the exact same thing happen to Williams in 2003 with Ken. He went up 7-1 in the first session, and I think might have been up about 15-9 at one stage, and Ken just threw the kitchen sink at him, and Higgins and Williams at that stage looked a bit rattled, was missing shots he shouldn't have been. But when it come down to it, when Higgins had levelled up, Williams was able to find that extra gear. Even after that amazing clear up. Now he misses the pink for a World Championship.
Yeah.
And Higgins, what a ballsy clearance that was. Clearance that was. Even after that, for Williams to have the strength of character to win the next frame and to make that winning break, that if that's something like that happened to Ryan Day, for example, your match is over. And that's why knowing
you could see with Williams, you could see visibly he wasn't flinching, he wasn't weighing, and you said the same reaction. He was, he missed that pink, and the way he reacted in the next frame, it was world class. He deserves to go into that category now. He's a third-time world champion now. He's a legend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So last week, Smeg, going back to a couple of your tips last week, you flagged up 3 really last week on the podcast. You had Siegmund tipped in. It was in Morocco, wasn't it? And you also on a Mugs Game Twitter, you had Mertens and Pliskova tips. So how did they do last week?
Yeah, well, basically on the Mugs Game, I had my outright bets on Stevens and Muguruza for the French, but I only tipped up one tip for the actual tournament, and I mentioned Mertens as well, but I said Laura Siegemund. She was 12-1.
Yeah.
And basically she was due to play Mertens in the second round of that match, and I just thought to myself, look at these are the two best players in the field. They both had very convincing first round wins, and I just thought to myself, you know what, I think Mertens should be backed here as well at 11-4. And I tipped that up on Twitter, and sometimes that's what we're going to have to do. If there's match best, or always if any punters follow our tips on the podcast, sometimes we might be tipping other match bets on Twitter that we won't have the time to do. So so basically Siegemund actually was the only person to take a set off Mertens in the whole tournament, but she retired injured in the second in the third set of that match, and Mertens went on to win at 11-4. So she proved to be 11-4 winner. And then of course later on in the week, I tipped up my only match bet of the week, which was Pliskova, Kristina Pliskova, not Carolina, her twin sister, to beat Anna Bogdan, and she obliged. She obliged. So that was at 4-6. So yeah.
Very good. So have you any tips for this week's tennis yet?
No, I don't, because if there are any tips matches that strike me, I will post them up on the Twitter, of course. But I decided after giving my outright tips, it's impossible for me to give any more French Open tips until I see the draw. Yeah. Obviously, when the qualifiers come out, I'll be putting out some match bet tips as well. But
qualifiers are week after next, is that right?
Qualifiers are starting the Monday after next, Monday week. But so I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about in-running betting strategies. You mentioned, what opportunities you tend to find in soccer. I want to talk about the ones that I have tend to find in tennis. Okay. And I suppose, historically for myself, in-running betting was quite profitable. I got closed down by the likes of Bet365 and Boyles and Stan James and a lot of different online sites, and one of the reasons is that at the time, when the bookies brought in the in-running model for tennis, they used to get the model on break and serve wrong. I remember back in the early days of in-running betting, I think they just used to overrate the serve, and you would have the likes of Serena Williams or Victoria Azarenka or even Rafael Nadal. They would start off at underdog prices to break serve, against your average journeyman or journeywoman on the tour. And you remember even from the last decade or two how you'd often hear scores like Azarenka 6-1 6-love or Nadal 6-1 6-2. So that happened. Now that has been rectified by the bookies for the most part, by most of them for the most part since. But but what I would say is that the mathematical system in place, it doesn't react, dramatically enough, I think, to momentum changes, to drastic, dramatic changes in momentum, and those are the times that you can avail of the opportunities to pounce, basically. Yeah. So I'm going to provide you with a few little tips, a few little strategies that have served me well in the past. I only actually have one more site that I can get on with, but and they actually don't offer the same sort of, they're a little bit shrewder with their prices as it's Sky Bet, and they're a little bit shrewder prices as Bet365 and Paddy Power, but I'd say very important to know your player. Just always very important to know your player. So, for example, I'll give you an example. There's some players are head cases, and they can't handle if you're in a Grand Slam match and it goes to a fifth set, it goes to a fourth set tiebreak.
Yeah.
And it's 7-6. What often happens, and it's competitive. Most of the players are holding serve, and so because of that, the prices of the service hold are quite high, because they've been regularly been held. Yeah. But say, for example, if it's a certain type of player who just would not be able to react well to the adversity of losing that fourth set, that is often a time to pounce and back those 4-1 or 5-1 prices. Yeah. So, like, I'm thinking, just for example, I remember Ernest Gulbers a few years back. Who he's good form at the time, and it was a very competitive match against Monfils, and then Monfils won a fourth set tiebreak, and then ended up winning the next set 6-1. But the changes in the prices, when you could visibly see that Gulbers had lost his head. Yeah. The model wasn't reacting well enough to this stat. Yeah. And so you were availing of prices of 4-1. Even after Monfils broke to love, and then held to 15, held to love. Even when Gulbis is barely winning a point, the price on him to break on Monfils to break serve next might have only switched to 7-2 or something like that. When it's really, really likely that it's going to break serve in the headspace that someone like Gulbis is in. So I just wanted to point out a few players regarding who are vulnerable to that, and I will do it in a moment. Now, not all players are like that. There's some great match players that can respond to that sort of adversity. Even not necessarily the greatest players, but just good match players like the likes of John Isner or Andrei Seppi are quite good at responding to adversity. But there's some players like maybe a Clizan or a Benoit Paire, who I'll be mentioning later on, that just don't quite react well to it. Okay. But as another rule of thumb that I'd like to suggest, for opportunities, especially coming the clay court season, sometimes top players lose concentration in the 5-set matches, and you should always be, because they are top players, they will always be quite big prices to get broken. But there are certain matches, it could be 2 sets up, and they might lose concentration in the third set, and it doesn't matter that much if they lose it, because if the golfing class is that is that obvious and apparent, generally they should be able to pull through. See out the game anyway. They'll see out the game anyway. So I'm just thinking, for example, I remember Andy Murray a few years back was playing run-of-the-mill, even a poor level challenger player, Matthias Borg, and it went to 5 sets anyway. But there was one stage in match that Murray had completely lost his head, and your man was 6 or 7-1 to break serve. Still, even after breaking him twice in a row. Yeah. So these things should always be watched out for. When a top player, so if you notice that a top player is losing concentration, they're overrated, because remember that there is opportunities to get on their opponent to break serve in those moments. You have to look out for those moments, because you'll have value prices there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just one or two more things as well is that you often find, I just want to point out certain players, who Kvitova would be another one like that. Actually, I'm just thinking that when she can go a little bit AWOL in certain games, and she can lose a set, and because she's renowned as a big server, she's often seen as someone that that price often reflects that. But when she's lost her mind, she is value. Yeah. So I just wanted to say, also watch out for players giving away sets to conserve energy in matches, or players who can start off slow. I'd point out Fabio Fognini from Italy. Wonderful shot maker, very temperamental, and if he goes down early in a fourth set, he's likely to just give it away 6-1 and conserve his energy for fifth set. Benoit Paire of France, another like that, kind of flamboyant shot maker. Martin Clizan, these guys will give away sets, in order to conserve energy. If they go down early. In a third or fourth set.
Could you name those 3 guys again?
Yeah, Fabio Fognini, Martin Clizan, Benoit Paire will be the 3 that stand out to me. But there's a few others that I might mention in future podcasts. And also, just sometimes you might have favourites winning tight sets in well contested matches. You might have the unfancy player could actually be. It could be a much more competitive match than then the prices adjust. Sometimes, you know, a player might start off 1-4 in a match, and if it goes to a tiebreak, right, and really tight match, and it's 7-6, and the fancied player, the 1-4 shot, wins that tiebreaker, that price could go to 1-10. When really, actually, what has been seen on the evidence of the game is this is a quite evenly matched game, and sometimes that's another time to get value is when the unfancied player, that the pre-match, the unfancied player loses the first set in a very tight competitive match. You'll often get value on the unfancied players.
Still in the game, like yeah.
So that's I'll say about that, yeah. So yeah, basically, you know, obviously you would say there's a few little mistakes you can make. You know, when you're in running, doing in-running betting, you know, sometimes your headspace is that you're searching for a bet. So you really do have to have a lot of discipline. You really do have to have patience and pick your spots, and just be careful. Don't be too trigger happy with.
Yeah, you've got to wait for it to come to you rather than you looking
for it.
You know,
exactly.
That's the key with it.
Exactly.
And you also, the other drawback of it is you don't have much time to really think at it. You know what I mean? You might 10 seconds.
I know.
Seconds at time.
That's it. Yeah.
So you got to
actually have drawback,
actual time. Like, but there's certainly plenty of opportunities out there, and we might chat a bit more about it in the weeks to come, and also maybe have some in-running tips on our Twitter page, especially during the World Cup.
Absolutely. Yeah, as I mentioned, my French Open tips will be coming up in a few weeks' time, starting off with the qualifiers, and then once the draw comes out, we'll try and find more outrights or more to win quarter markets and some more match betting prices for you. We just reiterate again our two bets that Ronnie has suggested is for this week's podcast is the 2.5 points on Galway to win the group in the Leinster Championship at 11-10 with Boyle Sports, and the 2.5 points in Uruguay to reach the last 8 at 13-8 in the World Cup, and that's also with Boyles. So without further ado, we'd just like to thank you again for listening. Please share it on Facebook, on Twitter, on any social media outlets that you have. Give us a follow, give us a retweet, give us a like. You can find us on Twitter at Mug Podcast, and you can also find us on the SoundCloud at Mug's Game. So Ronnie, have you got any more to say?
That's good. Any more tips, we'll put them out on Twitter over the next few days, and we will chat to you in a few days. Thank you.